We're going to drift a little outside the sports world this morning. We do this, I don't know, about once a week lately when I find something, or in this case, I'm sent a topic that pertains to some of the issues we talk about here on the channel. I had several of you guys send me this story last night, so I figured we would just go ahead and address it. We actually did this a couple of weeks ago with Taylor Lorenz. Sometimes I'll come across a story that's not necessarily related to sports, but it does fall into the realm of the media manipulation that we talk about every day. America's always gone through difficult times. Believe it or not, we have always dealt with groups who wanted to get rid of capitalism and implement socialism, communism, democratic socialism. They always change the name, but the concept is always the same. Woodrow Wilson. You could make the case that Woodrow Wilson did more to damage the country than any other president before him. Jimmy Carter. Many people are comparing what we're going through right now to the late 70s when Jimmy Carter was running the country into the ground. Everything is cyclical. We go through periods of unprecedented growth. The 90s is a great example of that. Every economic sector was booming in the 90s. Then we go through periods of growth and good times. Then we hit several years of hardship. The good times, they are never as good as they seem. The hard times, they are never as bad as they seem at the time. I remember when Barack Obama was elected, and pretty much throughout his first term in office, the far right, they acted like it was the end of America. There were protests across the country. You had the Tea Party protesting. You had Occupy Wall Street that seemed to go on forever. Throughout the history of America, when there has been tension, when there has been social unrest, it's almost always been political. It's been about policy, system of government, or in some cases, even war. Back in the 60s, a lot of people were against the war in Vietnam. The point is, the country has always been divided politically. But in terms of values, beliefs, the majority of the country's always been on the same page. Right now, we are in the midst of another period of political unrest. But what's going on today is different than what we have dealt with in the past. Well, it seems different. It's presented differently. The perception seems different because that's what they want you to believe. People in power are doing everything they can to keep us divided. They are using every minority group to push a cultural divide. They're trying to divide us racially. They're trying to keep us divided politically, sexuality, religion, sports. The fungus has infected every aspect of society. There has always been debate. There has always been difference of opinion. The difference between what's going on today and what's happened in the past, there's this perceived difference fundamentally. There is a perceived difference in values. And I use the word perceived because I don't think the majority of the population is divided on this issue. They want us to think we're divided, but I don't think we're divided, and I think they know it, which is why they continue to shove the issue in our face. Right now, there is this concerted effort to brainwash people, mainly the youth, into believing a lie that deals with the basic fundamental of human life. It deals with the basic fundamentals of existence. And I'm talking about gender. All the debates, all the difference of opinion, the wars, the political unrest, racial unrest, whatever the issue was, at the end of the day, one thing people have always been able to agree on: a man is a man, a woman is a woman. We have never had to debate gender. It is the easiest concept to understand. Even fucking children, with their limited capacity to understand things, even children understand gender. My oldest nephew is 5 years old. He knows the difference between a boy and a girl. As he grows and matures, he will come to understand there are a shitload of differences between men and women. But for now, my nephew only understands the physical difference. He's at the age where he has figured out it's fun to play with the toy in his pants. Unlike other toys where he gets bored with them after a week or two, the toy in his pants never gets old. He will come to find out it becomes even more fun to play with it when you get older and someone else can play with it for you. Well, Hopefully, he will find that out. He is yet to be indoctrinated by some 24-year-old non-binary shitfuck who hands him a test asking him how he identifies. If it ever does happen, the teacher is going to have bigger problems than grading some fucking test. Back in the 90s, Calvin Klein was a fashion icon. Calvin Klein was one of the largest fashion designers in the world. You walk down the halls of any high school in America in the 90s, everyone was wearing Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger. Over the last 5, maybe 10 years, Calvin Klein has seen a steep decline in revenue. In 2019, they discontinued their high-end line, claiming designer fashion is over. yeah. Tell that to all the women walking around in Louis Vuitton. What do major corporations do when they get knocked off their apex? What do major corporations do when their popularity starts to decline? In the past, they would do market research, monitor focus groups to figure out where the market was trending. They would use that data, make adjustments, and try to recapture market share. In modern corporate America, logic has become something rare. Major corporations, they no longer make decisions based off of logic. Market research, focus group, who needs that shit? I know the solution to our problem. Let's cater our brand to the lowest common denominator. Let's make sure we tithe 10% to Woke United Methodist. Over Mother's Day weekend, the marketing strategy of Calvin Klein was abundantly clear. They're no longer going after soccer moms. They're no longer going after teenage girls unless they have a turtle head in their pants. Calvin Klein is marketing their brand to the 0.07% of the population that identify as transgender. 0.07%. I want you to remember that number for what I tell you here in a few minutes. Not even 1 fucking percent of the population identifies as transgender. There are barely over 1 million transgender Americans. Now, you wouldn't think the number was that low. The mainstream media, they want you to believe half the fucking population is suffering from angry dick. I hate this dick. Why did God curse me with this little fucker? It always gets caught in my zipper. Check this shit out. This is the Mother's Day campaign from Calvin Klein. They want you to believe this shitfuck right here made the impossible possible. Calvin Klein wants you to believe that a man found a way to get pregnant. Now, of course, this isn't a man, it's a damn woman pretending to be a man. I guess she gets her holidays mixed up. Halloween takes place in October, honey, not fucking May. Check out the tagline from Rebel News. What better way to celebrate mom than with a pregnant man? My mom's always wanted me to have kids. I think she's come to the realization now that it's just never going to happen, but I think part of my mom still wants me to have a kid. However, if I surprised my mother on Mother's Day by coming home pregnant, I wouldn't have to worry about having kids. I wouldn't have to worry about living. My dad would beat the stupidity out of me. Calvin Klein is actively taking part in the agenda to not only confuse gender roles, but to completely confuse gender, the fundamentals of gender. If you don't like being a boy, that's okay. You have 67 other genders to choose from. Check out this gem right here. Often people seem to be confused when determining the gender of a person. It is extremely important for you to understand gender terms so you don't offend someone who enjoys a nice round of butt bongo with a cucumber. Oh, that cucumber is looking so enticing in that green shade of lipstick. I hope it plants its seed inside of me so we can have a baby cucumber. Us normal people, we might eat a cucumber with ranch, maybe some vinegar, cream cheese. But for a small minority, they like their cucumber with a little bit of natural seasoning, if you know what I mean. Only 0.07% of the adult population is confused about gender. The rest of us, we don't need a biologist to determine gender. Leah Thomas can grow his hair long, he can get fake implants, he can put on lipstick, but there's no hiding the man face. Richard Levine can change his name to Rachel, he can put on a girly suit, but at the end of the day, to the disappointment of all of us who have experienced the trauma of seeing it, There is no hiding man face. Guess who else doesn't need a biologist to determine gender? The couple in the Calvin Klein ad. On Wednesday, they took to Instagram to announce they had just given birth to a baby boy. Now, wait a minute. How do you know it's a boy? According to your own logic, the child has the ability to choose his own gender. Did you ask your child which gender he chose? Is this the first child in the history of mankind that possesses the ability to speak fluently at birth? From a business perspective, it makes absolutely no sense for Calvin Klein to specifically target 0.07% of the population. I should say, on the surface, specifically target 0.07% of the population. Businesses, they want to market their products to as many people as possible, especially when you're in the fashion industry. Does it make more sense to target 329 million people or 1 million people? Now, with that being the case, why would Calvin Klein do this? Why would they risk alienating 99.3% of the population to appease 0.07%? Because it's not about money. Hell, it's not even about the transgender community. They're just the latest group to be used by these evil shitfucks. It is about power and control. The purpose of this ad campaign, it wasn't to indoctrinate adults. Most common sense thinking adults, they know this is bullshit. They're targeting kids. More specifically, they are targeting young women, and it's working. There was a survey conducted recently involved kids from 15 to 17 years old. 5.7% of the boys identified as LGBT. That was a 1.2% increase since 2015. Young girls, 18%, a 6% increase and the highest number ever recorded. Young women are being bombarded with this bullshit and it's working. It's having an effect on them. I would imagine that number is actually a lot higher. If I had to guess, as is the case with most surveys, some were afraid to answer truthfully. We are losing an entire generation. We have an entire generation that doesn't understand the basic fundamentals of human life. If you have millions of people coming of age who don't understand the basic fundamentals, how are they going to understand real life issues? Gender is the easiest concept to grasp. The decision is made for you. You don't have to do anything but accept it. The mainstream media, they feed you a caricature of what constitutes a transgender person. They do this on purpose to create the divide. They present these flamboyant, over-the-top caricatures knowing that it will piss off most people over the age of 30, and knowing young children will think it's cool, they'll relate to it. What does this accomplish? The same thing Mao accomplished in China decades ago, turning a generation of children against their parents. Once this happens, kids don't stop needing guidance. They don't stop looking up to people. The need for guidance and acceptance, it doesn't just magically evaporate. Instead of looking to their parents, their grandparents, their aunts and uncles, they look to social media. They look to TikTok, full of confused, miserable shitfucks, pretending their life is this pretty little meadow when they fight internally every day over who they are. One of my original supporters on this channel, been with me almost since the beginning, is a transgender woman named Jane. Now, the mainstream media, they would lead you to believe there is no way me and Jane could agree on anything we couldn't relate. I'm a straight white male, she's a transgender woman. They can't agree. He's an evil white man, and she's a delicate little flower who has lived a life of judgment and ridicule. As it turns out, me and Jane agree on just about everything. She can't stand the Leah Thomases. She doesn't like the transgender community being used to further a twisted agenda that has nothing to do with the LGBT community and everything to do with power and control. You know how many times Jane has recommended her pronouns to me? 0. Hell, you know how many times that she has emailed me pissed off about something I said about the LGBT community? 0. I am sure there have been times that I've said something that Jane doesn't agree with, maybe even pissed her off. But Jane's not a fucking victim. She's just your average person who has a completely different lifestyle than I do. Now, according to everything that we're presented by the media, a Southern white male should have no way to relate to a transgender female. Yet somehow, we agree on just about every issue. I think most people in the LGBT community are just like Jane. They don't want to be activists. They don't want to shove their personal sexuality down your throat. They just want to live their lives and be left the fuck alone. I think most of them understand their lifestyles being used to further the divide in this country. There is not a war on the LGBT community. There's a war when the LGBT community is used to indoctrinate kids. But let me know what you think. Calvin Klein joining Woke United Methodists and presenting you with a supposedly pregnant man on Mother's Day. Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys later.